I don't know for sure if people still forget their kids in different places, but when I was a kid, it seemed like everybody had a story about, like, yeah, my parents were doing stuff, and they just left me at the thing. And there I was, and I woke up, and nobody was there. I guess they just forgot me. My sister, I think, got left at church one time, maybe sleeping in the nursery or something, and everybody just left, and Mom and Dad were like, well, where's the last place we saw the kid? I guess church. We haven't really been anywhere else. Oh, we should go get her. And they went and got her. My parents were good parents. Don't hold this against them. And I can think of a time where I was at wrestling practice when I was a little kid in Maquoketa, Iowa. And it seemed like the gym where we were doing wrestling was way, 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 way far away from where our house was. I've gone back and looked, and it's like 2 blocks. But it was cold. It was winter, and I had my little wrestling singlet on. And they just forgot. They just forgot to come get me. I don't know what they were thinking or what was going on. So I decided after a while, like, I got to brave it. And I'm a quarter. Not sure I knew how to use a payphone anyway. So I just marched myself down the way. I remember halfway home, I stopped at a house where a light was on across the street because I thought I'd remembered there being some friendly old people there. And I was like, I'm freezing and I'm a small boy. And could you please give me a ride to my parents' house? And they were like, no, it's the 80s. Like, you're just going to have to be, like, just going to put hair on your chest. Just get going there, boyo. And so I did. And I walked the rest of the way home. And instead of just walking in, I remember I knocked on the door to make it extra dramatic. And then when they opened it, I think I'd seen a cartoon or something where somebody was frozen and they fell forward in like a brick of frozenness. And so I did that. And it did not have the desired effect. They were not impressed. If anything, I think they were so unimpressed with my drama that they no longer felt obligated to apologize for forgetting me. But even if you've never had exactly that experience, everybody knows what it is to be forgotten or left out. There were plans, something fell through, something didn't get communicated, whatever. And here in Matthew chapter 26, we are kind of experiencing that, but very, very amplified. Because this all does feel very personal. And we're dealing with this theme that is really pronounced here over about 15 or 20 verses, where Jesus is setting up this whole thing for just how abandoned he is going to be. And let's just count the ways that he's going to be abandoned. Okay, 1, they're having Passover dinner, and he points out that somebody's going to basically sell him out to death. So that's not a light offense. And then after that, he's like, all of you are going to fall away, and it's inevitable. It's in the Bible and stuff. So that was going to happen. It's going to happen. And then when everybody starts arguing, particularly Peter is like, I will most certainly not. Jesus is like, yeah, you're gonna. And not only are you gonna, but you're gonna have like 3 opportunities to think about it. And each of those times you're still going to choose to hang me out to dry. And so Jesus is getting actively betrayed to death by one friend and passively abandoned to death by 11 other friends. Then if we go out to the meta level, we got to remember that Jesus has a whole bunch of followers, and they don't do anything. Further, Jesus he's not a citizen of the Roman Empire, but he's a resident of the Roman Empire. I mean, he has to pay taxes and stuff. And his government, they're not going to bail him out. They're actually going to assist in the abandonment, that is the murder plot. They'll play their role, so no help from them. Also, his own religious leaders, like metaphorically speaking, his pastors, they're not going to help him out. No, they actually want him to get murdered violently by the government and very publicly. And so you look at all of that abandonment that is explicit on the page, implicit on the page, but then you're like, but, you know, his father's always got his back. And about the time you start thinking that, and then thinking about what actually goes down, that's when some of what really feels from a human perspective very tragic starts to come into focus here, because the father doesn't show up in the same way that he has in earlier occasions. And just imagine you're reading through the book of Matthew right now, and you just got done with the Last Supper. You just got done with Jesus saying you're all going to fall away, and Peter being like, no, I'm not. And Jesus being like, yes, you are. And then you get to this passage here, Matthew 26:36. Then Jesus went with his disciples to a place called Gethsemane, and he said to them, sit here while I go over there and pray. And he took Peter and the 2 sons of Zebedee, that's James and John, along with him, and began to be sorrowful and troubled. Then he said to them, my soul is overwhelmed with sorrow to the point of death. Stay here and keep watch with me. Now, maybe you caught this, maybe you didn't, but it's been a little while since Peter's been on camera. We've done several episodes, if we imagine this to be a streaming TV show, where this character, this actor, just hasn't been on screen, but we all remember how he is. I don't think we've seen him since chapter 18. Does he come up in 19? No. Yeah. Yes. Peter comes up in 19. The last time we saw him was in 19. And interestingly, it's Peter once again kind of pushing back on Jesus. But more memorably, right before that in chapter 17, you've got the same three guys going along with Jesus. You got James, and you got John, and you got Peter. And remember, they go up the mountain together, and Jesus effectively reaches out to his father, and his father shows up. He's there, and he brings along a couple of the rock stars of the distant past, Moses and Elijah, and God, the Father, affirms Jesus right there in front of everybody who's present. And let's go back a little bit further, all the way to the baptism, Matthew chapter 3, right at the end of that one. Jesus is going to be baptized and to demonstrate his public alignment with the Father. And God the Father shows up. The whole Trinity shows up. It's unbelievable. And so if this is your first time reading through Matthew, and you read it attentively the same way you would attentively watch a TV show or movie or read a book, you're like, oh, I know the story beats here. Whenever Jesus is in this kind of situation, the Father comes through. The Father shows up in a really dramatic, inarguable way. And so you get to Matthew 26, and you're like, okay, well, it would be really symmetrical if this were like the third time that happened really overtly. And Jesus clearly needs it. I mean, look at this. He's invited the same three guys, so it's a lot like the transfiguration thing we just looked at in chapter 17. And he takes them with them. And wow, he's under duress. I mean, he feels things emotionally. The humanity of Jesus is very much on display. I mean, he's facing death and he knows it's coming. He says, my soul is overwhelmed with sorrow to the point of death. Stay here and keep watch with me. So he's leaning on these guys, but the relationship he leans into the most is the one with his Father. And so you get done with that and you'd be like, all right. And let's see what the next verse says. And after Jesus had said these things, the night sky became illuminated like day, and God himself showed up, saying unto all of them, this is my son who needs my affirmation right now, and I am always here for him, and I will never neglect him. Except you could tell that was really poorly written. None of that happened. That doesn't happen at all. What it actually says is going a little further. He fell with his face to the ground and prayed, my Father, if it's possible, may this cup be taken from me, yet not as I will, but as you will. And then you'd expect the next verse to be like, and then God was there like a Force ghost, and he was like, hey, I hear you. I know this is a tough one. We're going to go through it, but there. And he patted him thusly on his shoulder. But no, you don't get that. You also don't get, well, I mean, you're God in the flesh, and I always have your back. And if you don't want to do the redemptive plan thing anymore, let's just call it. You're right. This is going to be hard. It's going to be difficult. But we don't get that either. What we get instead is nothing. It's just no answer. We get a break from the pattern. It doesn't work the way it did the other times. And for the attentive reader going through this for the first time who hasn't had it spoiled by encountering it out of order just because this is part of the cultural framework of our world, and very few of us hear this story in order for the first time. Because of that, we all know that he's not going to show up and intervene. He's not going to step in and be like, all of you Sanhedrin people are idiots and your judgments are wrong. And behold, here's some miracles and I will descend from heaven and you'll see how it is. No. He could have stayed the hand of Pontius Pilate. I mean, listen to how much Bible this is. That much Bible. About a gazillion times we've seen him make kings and governors and secular leaders do stuff, but he doesn't make Pontius Pilate send Jesus away, a free man. Pontius Pilate sends him to the cross. So look, we got a bunch of details to break down here. What's going on with Gethsemane? Exactly where is this place? What's the significance of taking these three guys there? But the biggest thing I wanted to focus on next was just a simple principle that the story beats that have been established tell us that Jesus and the Father are on the same page, and the Father comes through and the Father shows up. But then we get to chapter 26, where we're dealing with the theme of Jesus' abandonment to this horrible sentence, this unjust punishment that should not be his to take on. And abandonment seems to be happening across the board. And God the Father does not give a positive answer to this prayer. If it's possible, may this cup be taken from me? No, this is happening. That would seem to be the answer to the prayer. Was Jesus out on the plan here? I don't think so. We'll talk more about that later. No, he knew what he was walking into. He's been saying it the whole time. I think Jesus was in on the plan fully, but this is where the plan gets really, really hard. And I think it's remarkable that we get this peel back the curtain moment and a look inside his relationship with the Father, and getting a glimpse into this element of his humanity gives us a much better understanding of the amount of abandonment, the amount of rejection, the amount of separation even that his act of going willingly to the cross was inflicting on him, and he didn't deserve it. So probably we all know what it's like to get left somewhere. We got some legend in our family of a sibling getting left somewhere for a minute before parents remembered, or maybe you know somebody else's story about that. This isn't that. This is the next level. This is a level of rejection that even those of us who've gone through very, very, very difficult, dark things, I'm not sure anybody has experienced the level of rejection and abandonment that it seems like we're witnessing here in Matthew chapter 26. I'm Matt. This is the 10-Minute Bible Hour podcast. Let's do this again soon.